Hello, everyone out there in radio or internet land. Real quick apologies if you are.
Yeah, I did want to briefly touch on the links between Trump officials and the rioters. Earlier I posted an article about how the FBI found a contact between the Proud Boys and Roger Stone. But just recently, we had someone else from our team uh, post an article about a Trump official getting thrown in jail for attacking a police officer and slamming him within a doorway of the White House. So I think it just kind of emphasizes the original point of the article that I was making. I thought that, oh, they found. I knew that I knew that there's at least some official connection between, Trump's federal government and the people who orchestrated the January 6th. But now we have it now we have official confirmation on two fronts in that matter. So it's hard. I guess what really draws the question is just how deep it goes, and what was and wasn't done about it.
Yeah, and a somewhat kind of separate but related issue. There was just a report. There was some testimony in Congress from a Pentagon official, basically pointing out that from the time that Capitol Police called for assistance to when there was an official response from the Pentagon, there was about a 3 hour and 40-minute window. And, I think a lot of I'm going to kind of broaden this topic out, but, one of the most frustrating things being an organizer or just like a resident of the United States empire is the historical memory. The way our culture deals with historical memory, which is to say, everything happens in a vacuum and you're supposed to forget everything almost immediately after it happens.
Right.
And with January 6th, now granted, there are still people in the mainstream media who are just, maybe taking some of the wrong lessons. There's a lot of liberals who's like, I can't believe this happened here. It's like, if you really read American history, it's like, actually, this is pretty common, a lot more than you were taught.
I think even the last 4 years are pretty indicative of it leading up to something like this.
Oh, yeah. But I think it does need to be underscored just how really the skin of our teeth prevented that situation being any more horrific than it was, and the implications of officials inside the Pentagon ignoring this deliberately. It paints a picture of at least Trump having enough loyalists in the government to obstruct direct action to a coup with a capital C. And that's really distressing. The implications, particularly if when they try this again in the future, in a way that is not half-aced, but also just the willingness of people who can be installed in the power structure to just let stuff like this happen. Because again,
yeah,
there were violent people in there who were just like one or two wrong turns from finding people who they wanted to lynch or murder or God knows what.
last I heard, they're 50 to 150 feet away from the actual members of Congress when they raided the Capitol.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's two things that kind of come to mind. This is one, liberal complacency. We see in a lot of the media, everybody's just so happy that a grown-up is back in charge that they're ignoring the fact that we had an insurgent fascist movement that basically did their version of the beer hall push a month ago. But what you could do, look, Bill Biden has a dog. On the other side of it, though, you have conservatives who similarly they want to pretend that nothing happened. And granted, I knew anybody who's been following American media long enough, you kind of can predict these things. They're pattern recognition. They're gonna go back to the pre-16 free speech zones, cancel culture stuff. The rapidity at which they did that though, and just the weird cognitive dissonance of having like the same people who like a month ago were trying to cancel the bourgeois democracy, at least the little democracy they have. We're not talking about like Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and stuff. So you see a right wing that is just completely resetting, or I should say a right wing media that's completely resetting to these weird culture war issues that it's meant to kind of like aggravate their base, while basically also kind of just being like, that is their way of returning to normal is like, again, these kind of nonsensical grievances. It kind of paves over the fact that just a month ago, this nascent fascist movement was ready to overturn. And we talked a lot about the flaws of American elections, but yeah, the funny thing about the 2020 elections, like, yeah, there was a lot of unfair stuff going on, but it was mostly from the other direction. It was conservative governments and governors and all that trying as hard as they could to suppress the vote, but you had enough of a voter turnout to overclock that whoops, sorry, you couldn't suppress enough votes this time. Which again is a big reason why a lot of states such as Georgia are now scrambling to institute some of the most archaic voter suppression laws we've seen in decades, because whoops, it was about a 67% turnout. And demographically, if you are going to run on this as this kind of white grievance hard right party, you don't have the numbers geographically anymore. So the only way to win is to suppress the vote or ignore them,
It's to suppress the vote and use the system of states to the advantage, whether that's through the electoral college or how we construct the Senate. Another thing that I think is important when considering what happened on January 6th is that a lot of people that like work for the government at like say the lower levels of like the FBI even, or even some of the higher levels, a lot of them are just either appointed or unelected bureaucrats. Like some guy applies for a job, they go through the process and they got on it, whether or not like, you or I might have anything to say about that. And considering that like some of these same people might have been on regime change assignments or COINTELPRO, or perhaps wanted to follow in some sort of tradition like that, it doesn't come as too much of a surprise that certain like smaller actors, so to speak, within the federal government have allowed the insurrection of January 6th to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And, even when we think of like the bizarre context of like, us finding out after the fact that the Proud Boys leader was an FBI informant. But, at the same time, like, it also kind of shows the duplicity of the American government, because like, what kind of intelligence were they gathering from this guy? They let him run roughshod and basically start a brown shirt street gang that was gaining a lot of power until very recently. It seems like once this is one thing I will hand, we leftists, we always complain about ourselves, and we're always like, oh, we're always infighting, all this stuff. It's like, well, at least our politics run a little bit deeper than whether or not dumb orange man is in charge, because you have a lot of these fascist paramilitaries and fascist adjacent groups of really just, they're like out in the woods because their orange doofus isn't in charge. Left, it's like, we got it. Okay, new capitalists in charge. We're gonna keep doing what we're doing, but
you could definitely say the same thing about neolibs on how much they centralize whether or not the orange man in charge.
Yes, and I'm sure they're all enjoying their brunch. Well, not right now. Tomorrow on brunch time. Yeah. So I like not to downplay it. And I think it's really important to hang on. It's like, yes, the constituency of these movements are still out there, and the potential for this to resurge in the next few years, and especially around 2024, is very, very high.
Okay.
It really remains to be seen how we can come to an actual reckoning with a lot of this stuff, because there's some deep problems here that you're not going to really solve Just, Joe Biden's got this fantasy about like, oh, we'll restore like, bipartisanship and all that stuff. And, we've had decades of really insidious lies and propaganda, that like, it's not even about like making people forget about basic facts, like, why we're the only country that doesn't have a healthcare system, et cetera, et cetera. It's gotten so bad that there's a whole media apparatus in this country that is designed to make you hate your neighbor based on completely fabricated information. And as long as that media apparatus is there, there is no reason to think that this isn't going to happen again and that's going to be worse the next time it happens. And of course, I'm referring to, things like, Fox News, Breitbart, One News Network, etc.
Right.
It goes back to like the fairness doctrine in the 90s being taken back, which again, that was a move from the Clinton administration, a lot of pressure from big telecoms, because it's like, we can make more profit if we take this away. And again, like so much of the history of fascism, when the capitalists open Pandora's box, the monsters come out.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I actually have to get going, but another video podcast that would be good for this specific topic is from the Empire Files. Jan 6 was an inside job. I put it in the group chat much earlier because she like Abby Martin and her people had a lot figured out, like even early on. So I'll post it again, and you can read into it if you're interested.
All right, Nora, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. We had a great discussion. Have fun in Chicago.
Thank you.
Keep us posted.
Absolutely. Take care.